Welcome to Loftus Road. David Freezer here, reporting after a fairly miserable Easter Monday, I'm afraid, for Norwich City fans. It's finished 4-1 here to the hosts, and it was a game that Norwich fans won't want to remember for a long while. It's unfortunately probably up there with the 4-0 defeat at Millwall back in August, which of course had such a big bearing on the early stages of Daniel Farke's reign here. Or with Norwich City, and we'll have to see what the ramifications of this one were. And it's even worse because Norwich actually took a 1-0 lead late in the first half, helped by an own goal forced by Josh Murphy to a certain extent, and a reasonable performance in the first half of two teams who looked very mid-table, looked like they were meandering to nothing really, but QPR came back out for the second half and were much better. Just to take you through the main events of the game quickly, Neda Manua had a header which looped onto the roof of the Norwich net in the 21st minute, shortly after Mario Vrancic missed a header at the back post from a James Maddison corner for Norwich, and that was two big chances gone. The rain was falling heavily in the first half here, and Joel Lynch tested Angus Gunn with a low shot which skidded along the turf, and Gunn did well to save that, but his day got bad, got a lot worse from that point. Matt Smith was kind of the key man here for QPR. He's an absolute giant, about 6'6". Daniel Farke decided to go with Grant Hanley and Christoph Zimmermann in a 4-2-3-1 shape, and even the strength and size of those two, they couldn't deal with him. He's a real powerhouse. He headed against the bar in the 35th minute, and then it was Abire Eze. He looped a header onto the roof of the net, so QPR had plenty of chances, but then Norwich go up the other end, 38th minute. Like I say, Josh Murphy goes through one-on-one, forces an own goal. It was kind of Alex Smithy's fault. He tried to save from Murphy, and the ball then went in off Ryan Manning. But you know, most dangerous time in football is just after you scored a goal, and Norwich proved that was the case. Less than a minute later, Massimo Luongo, Australia international, very lively player, was with Tottenham when he was younger, I believe. He poked beyond Angus Gunn. It was James Husband who seemed to be slacking, I suppose is probably the best way to put it, in the lead up to the game. So straight away they equalised. Soon after, James Husband could well have been sent off as well. A pretty meaty challenge on Luongo, but they were both booked. Luongo's reaction presumably getting him the yellow card, but that really got the home fans going, and at the break it seemed like we had a decent game on our hands, but Norwich decided to kind of implode from that point, unfortunately. Smith was the man who put them in front, Matt Smith, and it came from I believe it was a Manning shot. Grant Hanley deflected it up, it was looped up. Angus Gunn, it was almost as if he didn't realise Smith was quite so close. The ball went to the right of his goal, and you thought, you know, routine claim really, he goes and catches the ball, but Smith managed to beat him to it and nod in at the near post. So Angus Gunn, of course, has been very consistent for Norwich this season, but this wasn't one of his better days, and that was probably the biggest rick of the season from him, to be honest. He also kicked the ball straight out of play at one point, which, again, we've just not seen that from Angus. So one of those days really for Norwich, but the pain didn't stop there, and the away fans, there was 1,800 away fans here out of just over 14,000 at Loftus Road, and they weren't happy in the second half, to be honest. It was probably the first signs of a bit of negativity towards Daniel Farke, I'd have said, from the away fans. I've been to pretty much all the games this season. I did miss Good Friday's game against Fulham as I was on holiday last week, but yeah, I've not really seen the Norwich fans turn on Daniel too much so far this season, and most seem to be willing to persevere with the project. It was 3-1 on the hour mark. Easy made it 3-1. Soon after that, Nelson Oliveira had a couple of chances. Grant Hanley was then booked, having to bring, well, it's quite a bad tackle actually on Luke Freeman on the edge of the box, and Freeman eventually curled the free kick into the side netting as well, so they were kind of rampant at that point. And then Christoph Zimmermann was also booked in the 79th minute. He dragged back Easy as he broke through, and QPR used that free kick quickly, played it out to the left there. Their left back Jake Bidwell crossed, and Jamal Lewis had come on for James Husband midway through the second half, and he was beaten all ends up in the air really. Ryan Manning had the run on him and made amends for the own goal in the first half, which wasn't really his fault, to be honest. Wasn't much he could do about it, but that made it 4-1, and from that point the away end was quite negative. Chance of Farke give us a sub was the one that stuck out. That substitution of Lewis coming on for Husband was the only one, and I guess by that point, 10 minutes left to play of regular time, Daniel thought there wasn't really much point of putting a likes of Marcus Edwards on. Started with Wes Houlihan today as well, and whether that had a negative effect on James Maddison, maybe too much of a simple presumption, but Maddison perhaps is just tailing off a little bit, which is no surprise. He has had a fantastic season for a 21-year-old, and this is still his breakthrough season. So we saw it here at Norwich with Jacob Murphy last year, that young players can tail off in that way. So where do we place this overall in the whole scheme of the revamp of Norwich City, of Stuart Webber as sporting director, as Daniel Farke as head coach? It's difficult to say, but if the season continues like this for the final 6 games, for some very difficult games coming up, you've got Aston Villa at home, go to Preston away. Of course, Alex Neil has got them pushing for the playoffs, even though they did lose to Derby, I think, in the early game today. Still 14th, QPR now just a couple of points behind in the table, so they could slip a few places still. Ipswich still, they still haven't managed to get above Ipswich, so we've spoken about how that could be one of the motivators, and I just spoke to Ivo Pinto, and he was pretty frank. He said that if the players don't realise that they have got to earn the right to wear the Norwich City shirt, then they need to reevaluate what they're doing with their lives and their jobs. You know how Ivo likes to talk, and how he is on social media as well. He likes his motivational speeches, but he said the dressing room was definitely a mixture of disappointment and anger after this one. So a bad day at the office, one that Daniel Farke, I think he had to take a minute to compose himself before he came in and spoke to the press, but he seemed to have calmed down to a certain extent. And similarly to what Pinto said, he said if the players don't realise that they've got something to play for the rest of the season, then they're very wrong. So as much as people might say they're on the beach and this season's over, there are 6 games left to play, and if they play like that against Aston Villa, against Preston, against Leeds, there's the games. Sunderland, of course, they go away to Sunderland, who are fighting for their lives, and QPR didn't really have much to play for today, but they certainly looked a better side than Norwich on what we saw today. So we'll leave it there. It's finished QPR 4, Norwich City 1. We will be back with you back at Carrow Road next Saturday when Aston Villa come to town, and of course they are still hoping they can force their way into the top 2.